Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. When I was invited and when I checked the list of all the participants on this conference, I got scared a bit. I mean, being amongst all the political and theoretical heavyweights that are participating here, it seemed like this is not the place for you. But then I asked myself, what can you offer to this audience that might be of use and interest? And I do believe this is our story. The story of Marxist and socialist revival that has been gaining ground in Slovenia in recent years. But to understand this story, we need to go a little bit back in time and begin with the disintegration of Yugoslavia. As you all know, Yugoslavia was a bit specific. It had self-management, socialism, which was very much different from the other members of the Eastern Bloc. I would argue it was a type of socialism that went furthest in developing the socialist ideas. Nonetheless, as you all know, it tragically ended. From the point of view of Marxist theory, what is perplexing and surprising, I mean, not really surprising, but then again, is that overnight, Marxist theory that was systematically developed for several decades, whole institutes that were dealing with this theory was dumped, was put into exodus from the universities. People were not really dealing with this theory anymore. It seemed like a matter of good taste to start being liberals instead of Marxists. So it seemed as if collapse of actually existing socialism by some necessity entailed also the bankruptcy of Marxism as a theory that can provide some conceptual apparatus to grasp the dynamics of contemporary world. So 90s as such were very sad years for Marxist theory in Slovenia. One didn't really need a lot of arguments to discard it as something that belongs to the dustbin of history. However, there still were a couple of heroes, namely one professor at the Faculty of Arts who was still brave enough to continue with his Marxist scholarship. And indeed, sometimes one person can play an important role in history, and he definitely did for us. He educated the first generation of Marxists, our colleagues that are 5 or 10 years older than us. So he provided, he safeguarded the flame of Marxist theory. But slowly, new generations emerged, and young people discovered that university as such is not offering them enough. Because, as I said, Marxism, critical theory were not taught at the university. Liberalism became predominant, market-oriented neoliberal economic policies, etc., etc. It was around that time that kind of para-university was formed in Slovenian social center called Metelkova City by the name of Workers and Punks University. And this was the organization where young people could gather and collectively read Das Kapital and other works by Karl Marx or Friedrich Engels or other progressive thinkers. And slowly, gradually, this became consciously a Marxist project. Because at first, the first generation of Workers and Punks University were still mostly philosophers dealing with eternal themes such as love, sin, stupidity, etc., etc. But then with the generational shift, when our generation became active in Workers' and Punks University, that was like 5 or 6 years ago, we consciously decided that we really want to pursue the path of critique of political economy. So instead of organizing annual series of lectures on stupidity, we organized a series of lectures on class struggle, financialization, Euro crisis, or the current series of lectures that is still going on about socialism. And of course, we were all student activists as well. And another important moment in our development as a young collective, I'm speaking of a collective of around 15 to 20 people, one might cynically call it a sect or a very marginal group, but nonetheless, a very enthusiastic collective that is trying to do its best in coming to good terms with Marxist theory. But as I said, we were also very active in student politics, and a very important event was the occupation of our Faculty of Arts that happened in the winter of 2011 and up till spring of 2012. And this was a very good experience because we had, every night we had student assemblies, roughly the same amount of people that are now in this room gathered, and we were functioning according to principles of direct democracy. So if you proposed an idea, you were responsible to implement that idea. At least that was the idea. Simultaneously with this, we had our small version of Occupy movement. As you can imagine, Slovenia being a very small country of only 2 million people, our stock exchange is also very small. So, but then again, we had a couple of tents for a couple of months in front of this stock exchange, and there again, the assemblies were functioning according to principles of direct democracy. And when the occupation of the faculty ended and didn't really achieve anything that we tried to, when the occupation of the square in front of the stock exchange market ended and didn't really achieve anything we wanted, there came a time of reflection in the year of 2012. We realized that, of course, Marxist theory is of crucial importance if trying to soberly understand the dynamics of capitalism, of the world as such. But being a strictly theoretical project, it became very obvious that this is not enough, that we need to start seriously transforming ourselves into a political subject. Well, easier said than done. This was perhaps most stressful, most traumatic couple of months in my life when we were trying to come to terms how would this political subject really look like. Should we join the social democracy and try to subvert the party from the inside? Should we try to subvert the trade unions? Should we try to subvert the organization of partisans from the Second World War, which is a very strong organization in Slovenia? We developed all kinds of scenarios, and none of them proved to be a viable solution. At the end of the day, we had to realize that the most difficult path is the only one that is open to us, that we ourselves need to start building our own party. And another very lucky thing happened when we decided for this, and we decided that our political signifier will be democratic socialism. And now we are already in the autumn of 2012. And this is the time when a huge series of protests swept Slovenia for a couple of months. These were unseen protests. If some of you have heard about Slovenia, it is usually portrayed as a kind of success story. Our politicians even had fantasies about producing a kind of Balkan Switzerland. And supposedly, yeah, it was a kind of the best member among the East European members. So it was quite a shock to see these huge, massive protests, upheavals, such massive discontent. But one needs to remind himself that at that time, crisis really started hitting hard Slovenia. Lots of social cuts have been done, and people really had a hard time living. I mean, from 2 million people, 400,000 people live just above or below poverty line. 130,000 people are unemployed. Among those, 30,000 are young people with no perspective whatsoever. So this was a time of protests, which was significant for another peculiar thing. Protesters emphasized that both the left wing as well as the right wing are the same. So it was a kind of at least implicit realization that both the left wing and the right wing are both part of some grander coalition that is actually a coalition of capital's own interests. We as a collective participated on every of these protests, and we had our banners advocating for democratic socialism, and we were noticed by wider Slovenian public, by the media, and since we were very grounded in Marxist theory, socialist analysis and writing, we didn't really have a hard time writing articles, giving interviews, statements, whenever the opportunity showed. And surprisingly, there were a lot of opportunities. In a span of just around 4 months, we had around 200 or even more public appearances, and at least one thing remained the same. We always said that we need democratic socialism, that none of the existing political options have any rational solution to the crisis that would not entail greater suffering that is already going on. And this was actually the first time after more than 20 years that somebody started talking about socialism in Slovenia. Before that, it seemed inappropriate. It seemed something that history has long surpassed and will never return. And what was even more significant is that we, being a young collective, most of us of 5 or 6 years old, when Yugoslavia disintegrated, nobody could blame us for being nostalgic or for anything of that matter. On such positive feedback, we decided to form Initiative for Democratic Socialism, which we did on a symbolic date of 1st of May last year. And this was still a part of civil society, an informal initiative, but it was a kind of incubator, a kind of training ground for a party that we later on developed. At its high point, this initiative, before transforming itself into a party, had 70 people. And we divided our work in different working groups. For example, one working group was specifically designated to solve organizational matters. For example, how to achieve the highest possible democracy while the efficiency of our work would not suffer. How to make a mass organization where everyone's voice would be heard. We had a group that was dealing with program, because now it was not just the university, but society as such. It was not just the university struggle, but a kind of universal struggle between capital and labor that we were trying to address in all kinds of sectors of society. We were trying to understand the agricultural politics, the urbanism, and all kinds of things that were completely new to us at the time. We did a lot of work in regional expansion, in traveling all around Slovenia, presenting our ideas, agitating for people to join us. We did a lot of work in the international field as well, especially in establishing connections with parties of European left, because it goes without saying that we were always inspired by Syriza, Die Linke, and parties like that. And another big moment in this transformation from a strictly Marxist theoretical project to socialist political subject was just 2 weeks ago, on the 8th of March, another very symbolic date, the International Women's Day, was the day when we had the founding congress of our party, which currently has 300 members. And we are daily gaining support from all around Slovenia. People are writing to us how can they activate and everything. And we have already decided to and formed the coalition. It's by the name of United Left, that consists of us and 2 other leftist parties. And we were very grateful that Alexis Tsipras came to Slovenia and supported the founding congress of this coalition that will jointly candidate on European elections. So, of course, small country, small party, but I do believe a big effort and hopefully an interesting story, perhaps inspiring story, that it can be done. That even in circumstances of a post-socialist country where socialism supposedly was demonized the furthest, socialism can achieve its revival, its renaissance. Thank you.